What's up, everyone? It's
What
Monday.
up?
It's Monday, right? Happy Monday.
Is it? Was there a weekend?
Yeah, right. It went by so fast.
Yeah, it did.
We are your hosts, the Brown Brothers, Omar Galani, Luis Martinez. Happy for you guys to join us today. We had 2 weeks off. I was busy traveling abroad, training with Ron Kosen Sensei from the Shisenkan Kobudo Federation at the International Taikai, which was a big get together of martial artists from around the world. And we trained really hard for about a week, 6 hours of training a day. And it was a lot of fun. Very taxing on the body, obviously, but still a lot of fun. So,
Yeah, that was a long event. How
yeah,
many days was it?
I think it was like 7, 8 days.
Wow.
Yeah.
And from what we're used to, I mean, those events were usually like 4 full days of training, and then there was like a travel day,
Yeah.
like touring and stuff, and like a 5th day. I can't imagine 8 days.
Yeah, I think it was like 7 days of training and then like 1 day of sightseeing.
Wow.
Yeah, it was pretty intense. I bunch of us tested. I got my 5th degree black belt, which was pretty cool. So yeah, you need to get yours next.
Yeah, you're definitely leaving quite the gap between us. I was hoping to get my 4th degree. Unfortunately, I couldn't make the trip, but now I've got to double time it.
Yeah, Japan next year.
Yep, that is happening.
So I can't wait for you to experience Japan. You're gonna love it. Like, you think you're in love with Japan now until you go.
I can't imagine. I'm trying to keep like a really open mind, even though I hear like you and so many of my other friends have already been there, and I hear so much about it. Some of my students, have been there and lived there as well.
Yeah.
And it's like when people start talking about Japan, I'm like, oh yeah, well you should go here, here, and here, and they're like, well, you've been there? I said no. I just know a lot of people that have been there, so. Yeah, I mean, I can't wait and finally get to experience that. It's just, now it's just waiting for, a year.
Right. But for those of you that are joining us tonight, make sure you comment, ask questions, like this. If you like what we're doing, keeps us motivated to keep doing it. Obviously, we don't make money doing this. We're doing this just for fun. So share it. Share it in martial arts groups. Share it in on your page. Share it wherever you want to, wherever you can. Yeah. So first topic of the day, we're gonna talk a little bit about this Cobra Kai. So, your opinion. I want to hear your opinion first. What do you think about the show overall? Because I have my strong opinion on it.
Yeah. No, me. All right. I guess we should put a disclaimer out here. If you have not seen this show, maybe you want to tune back in like, I don't know, 10, 15 minutes to be on the safe side, because we're probably going to discuss some spoilers. So it's up to season 5 right now. I think personally for me, I've been enjoying it. I think because this is trying to pick up the same cheese factor from the originals from like the 80s. Like it's enjoyable. It's a throwback, and some of the fight scenes are good. Some of them are just, some of them you just have to suck it up and just, and just watch it. But overall, I mean, I think that, the show's been really enjoyable. There's been really enjoyed a lot of the throwbacks, a lot of the same characters that they've brought back, the actors, not even just the characters, but the actors. So that's been really cool. I feel like now with season 5, although I I feel like I've really enjoyed it, but I feel like they're going in a few too many circles now. It's starting to get a little bit redundant.
Mhm.
You know, I forgot her name. The girl, the one, the evil one. She switched teams again. What's her name? She's not evil, but
Oh, the blonde.
yeah. I think the
Oh, she's not really
yeah,
blonde, but like kind of
she's
dirty
like a
blonde.
like dirty blonde or brunette or so. I can't
Yeah,
even remember now.
yeah,
But yeah, her.
yeah,
It's getting a little old.
yeah. No, I hear you. I think it. I think when YouTube, it originally aired on YouTube, right? Was it YouTube?
Oh yeah, you're right. Yeah, the
Yeah,
first season did.
yeah. I think the second season as well,
Mm,
if I'm not mistaken. The first two seasons, phenomenal, right?
yeah,
I think they did a lot of homework on, you know, giving that nostalgic 80s feeling and
yeah,
also bringing back, obviously important characters, things like that. I feel like after Netflix took it over, of course, Netflix is a money conglomerate. They're going to try to appease the masses and not, because I feel like YouTube, made the show for people our age and a little older, right? They made
yeah,
the show specifically for
yeah,
us. You know what I mean?
yeah.
Obviously, Netflix wants to cast it up a wider net and try to get everyone to watch it, which, I think they've been pretty successful at because it's always, anytime a new season comes out, like it's like the number one show and things like that. However, it feels a lot like Power Rangers. The fight scenes, they're kind of over the top, you know. Um,
Yeah.
it doesn't the one thing that pisses me off, especially this past season, it doesn't help martial arts schools in any way because everybody is fighting all the time.
Good. Yeah.
So, you know, to the untrained person, a mom, a dad, or whatever watching this who's thinking about putting their kid into martial arts, right? For obvious positive reasons, right? They might watch that and be like, well, I don't want my kid fighting all the time. You know what I mean? If this is what martial arts promotes, you know what I mean? I don't want they even had this last season, the one scene they had underage drinking. You know what I mean?
Oh wow.
Even
Yeah.
even the good guys were drinking. You
Yeah.
know what I mean? So it wasn't usually, when there's underage drinking, it's usually the bad kids, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
But they even had the good kids underage drinking.
That's an interesting point. I guess I'm just so desensitized. Like it didn't even occur to me. I was just watching it. That's a really good point.
Yeah. So it doesn't help us in any way who have martial arts schools and
Yeah.
want to help people and, change people's lives and things like that. So
I mean, it really does make traditional schools, especially, look even worse. I feel like. I mean, there's just so many really cringy scenes that are just
yeah,
um, let's just say that they're promoting they're making guys that do like BJJ and MMA look like like they know absolutely nothing at all. And for anyone that's trained in martial arts even for a little while knows that that's not true.
right.
But it's over the top, it's silly. I feel like there were lines that they kind of like borders they had in the beginning, like you said, season 1, season 2, and then they started crossing those borders, those lines.
Right.
And now it's just now it's kind of all over the place. I mean, still I've been enjoying it, but at the end of the day it's like it's like going back to watch Bloodsport or Kickboxer or something. It's like you have to remember you're going back in time, a few decades, and it's that cheese factor that you have to be okay with, and you have to do that with this show. But then in some parts of the show it's like, all right, well, it's a new show, they're showing kids like from nowadays, but then when it goes to Daniel LaRusso and Cobra Kai, uh
Johnny
Johnny
Lawrence.
Johnny
Yeah.
Lawrence, yeah,
Yeah.
main guy. Then it's like then it's a throwback.
Right.
So it's a little weird kind of going back and forth. The show is a little bit all over the place. I'm here for the ride. I don't like what they did with the last season. They gave us 5 episodes, and now we have to wait. What is it, like a year?
No, I think it's like 6 months or something like that.
Oh, okay,
Yeah,
okay.
but
It's a little
still,
silly,
yeah,
but yeah,
yeah. And it's like, um, the whole um Sakai Taikai tournament, like
Yeah.
I could already tell that's going to be cheesy. You know what I mean? Like just the way they went about that, and um like the tournament setting, and it's like there's nothing like that out there. Like just stop. You know what I mean?
It's the Kumite.
Yeah, yeah. So that's basically what it reminded me of. But like a fancier kumite from Bloodsport. Um
I mean, look, I was actually kind of hyped about it. I mean, I thought those Korean kids, you could tell like those are legit martial artists in real life. The way those kids were moving was really cool. That was really nice to see that. Um, but again, when it was, that I keep forgetting that Tori, I think it's
yeah,
Tori was her
Tori.
name.
Yep.
Yeah, when she flipped sides again at the end, in that cliffhanger, and I'm like, all right, great, here we go again. It's
Yeah.
gonna be the same old stuff. It's not gonna be anything new.
Yeah, and it's like John Kreese is like 90 years old. You know what I mean?
Yeah,
And he still keeps
yeah,
coming back. You know what I mean? Cobra. I get it. Cobra Kai never dies. I get it. You know what I mean? But I think it needs, either it needs to die or something. It's like it's the same thing. You know, it's Kreese coming back and trying to get back at everyone who ever did him wrong. And it's like I feel like it can't always be Kreese being the main bad guy. You know what I mean?
yeah,
Like he keeps getting defeated. Like let him be. Bring on
yeah.
somebody new or somebody fresh. You know what I
Right,
mean?
right.
Whatever. You know what I mean? I don't know. I think this is the last season anyway. I think they
It
said
is.
so.
Yeah,
So
that's why they're splitting it up. They're trying to,
prolong it.
prolong it as much as they can. So
Yeah.
it's
Yeah.
it's exactly what they did with the Game of Thrones the last season as well.
Yeah. Before we get into like our main topic, I kind of always want to ask this question like every episode we do. How classes have been going at your school?
Yeah, it's been a little bit light. I think I mentioned that last time. Over the summer, a lot of people are just, away and, in summer mode. But now things are slowly starting to change. Some of the students are starting to come back again. Because, actually, my daughter just started school today. And, for a lot of other people, school starting either now or next week. So everyone's kind of getting back into the rhythm of, you know, um, away from summer vacation again. But I we there's actually a big festival that's happening in town here in a month, and I'll have like a tent and a table set up there. So apparently it's a really big event. I've never been a part of it before. I've somehow missed out on it, and luckily I found out about it this year, and so I have a lot of high hopes for that.
Yeah.
But especially because I
Tabling
started this program this spring.
tabling events are always awesome. Especially if they're
Yeah.
big, you know what I mean? You get
Yeah.
a lot of interest in your school and things like that.
Yeah, and the festival is literally about 2.5 blocks down the street from my dojo. So
Perfect.
yeah.
That's awesome.
What about you? How are your classes going? I know you've been away for like 2 weeks, but
Yeah, so trying to get back in the rhythm of things. Also experiencing the same thing. Classes are light right now because of last minute summer vacations and things like that. It's funny how
yeah,
like when people have when people have more time in their hands, there's less attendance. You know, versus when they have less time on their hands, there's more attendance.
yeah,
But I get it. I mean,
yeah,
they got their beach trips and all
right.
that fun stuff. But I usually don't teach uh, on like Mondays. I actually taught tonight.
Okay.
I've been seeing some lackadaisiness from the students,
Mhm.
and I don't think it's a fault of anyone really. I think we're being too nice to them is what I
Mm,
told my instructors. Is I think we're being too nice to them. I think we need to be more critical of their technique, even if the truth hurts a little bit. And but at the same time, you got to be compassionate as well, right? But I think we need to be a little harder on our students and bring that quality back up because I think we're letting a lot of little things slide. And when you let several little things slide, it eventually develops into really bad habits. If that makes sense. So
so legit question for you: Do you think that your students are getting more laxy-daisy, as you said, or do you think it's because you just spent 2 weeks with your teacher?
Well, that shouldn't really matter because I don't really teach. I'm talking about the kids' classes themselves. I don't really teach those.
Okay, okay.
I
I know.
usually teach.
The reason I was asking is because I know, like, whenever I come back from
Yeah.
events like that, I'm like super amped up, and I'm just like, you know what? I don't want to smile in class anymore. I'm just gonna be like super strict. And
You mean
like a week later, yeah, yeah,
me?
yeah, yeah.
Yeah. So like, I'm always, I always get pumped up when I come back, and I got, you know, I got yelled at, not yelled at, but you know what I mean. I got yelled at the whole
Mm,
week, for bad
mm,
habits and things like that.
yeah,
So, yeah, when I come back, I want my students to, uh, I don't know, I guess get the same treatment. You know what I mean? Because I know they can be better. Basically, I
yeah.
know my teacher's getting on me because he knows I could be better. So I want to get on my students because I know they can be better.
Right, right, right.
So, but yeah, so we have a big topic to talk about,
Yeah.
right?
All right.
So what do you got?
All right. So one of the things I wanted to do today was upset a lot of our viewers. I think that's a great way to start off episode 2. All right. I mean, ever since I found out we're not getting paid to do this, no, I'm kidding.
If anybody
So,
wants to throw a sponsorship at us, feel free to contact us. Email us, DM us. We can promote your products on here
yes, if you like losing your money, hit us up.
with our 10 viewers.
Wow. Wait, we're already at 10?
I don't know.
Wow, we're going places. All right. So a tier list. And I know tier lists, for those of you who are familiar, can be quite controversial. So in this case, the topic is going to be, Lewis and I, we have a bunch of martial arts. There's hundreds of martial arts out there, so it's not going to be all of them. But I tried to pick the most popular ones out there, and we're going to rate them in terms of applicability for self-defense. So specifically for self-defense, right? And not every martial art is meant to be, is not specifically made for self-defense. Just like some arts are not made for combat sports or organized fighting, and vice versa. So, there'll be, I'll read through a few of the guidelines, I guess, that everyone should be aware of before we start getting into it, and then understanding that, of course, these are our opinions, right, from Lewis and I.
Yeah. Also, guys, again, if you have any comments or questions, go ahead and type them. We see them. We can like put them up on the screen here so everybody can see them, like this. Like this guy. Thank you for giving us peace sign. So if you have comments, questions, please don't be afraid. Okay. No question's a stupid one.
All right. Here, let me get this in presentation mode.
I feel like I should be doing some music, like do 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 do.
All right. So let me just give you a breakdown of some of the rules, or I guess guidelines, like I said, right? So first thing we're going to do is we're going to define self-defense, how we see self-defense, and we're going to talk about how it's different from combat sports. I think that's a really, really big one, and that's going to be the first topic that we're going to talk about. Then we're going to get into, just understanding that these are only focusing on the legal aspects of self-defense, so nothing lethal. So for example, if we're talking about, I don't know, like a sword art, right? We're not going to say, oh, well, I can slice up this burglar in, a split second because I've done lots of tatami cutting practice. We're not going to focus on that aspect. We're going to focus on the legal aspects, how you can use the techniques from said martial art legally.
Yeah, and frankly, you can't carry a sword around unless you live in Texas.
Yeah. and then also some of the styles have like multiple, I guess you can say, like styles within them, like kung fu, for example, right? For anyone that's trained or even familiar more than the average person about kung fu, you'd understand that kung fu is really just Chinese martial arts, right? And they have tons of martial arts. There's a couple of different categories you'll see as we get to it, but there's like, I've separated as internal kung fu and external kung fu. We'll talk about that a little bit more when we get to that. And then what the tiers mean. So, we have a tier system, and then, once we get to that point, I'll start sharing my screen, and then we'll start dragging and dropping the different martial arts into the different tiers as we talk about them.
Awesome.
All right. So, Lewis, in your like definition and your experience, because obviously you teach self-defense as well, and we all know self-defense and martial arts are not always the same thing. And in fact, like, you can train in self-defense even without training in martial arts, right? And the reality is that when you train in hand-to-hand combat, that's really just like your 5 to 10% of self-defense.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So in your definition, how would you define self-defense? Because I know you have a Krav program at your school too.
Yeah. So I guess I'll give the literal definition of self-defense, and then I'll kind of give my opinion on it. So the literal definition of self-defense is the defense of one's person, the defense of one's person or interests, especially through the use of physical force, which is permitted in certain cases as an answer to a charge of a violent crime. So my opinion on self-defense, it's you're defending yourself from harm to yourself or to a loved one or friend or whatever, for the purpose of surviving, right? Because technically, like, you can say, like, well, fist fights in a bar, don't usually end up in death or whatever, but you never know. Somebody can punch you, right? Knock you out. You can fall the wrong way, hit the back of your head, and then boom, that's it. You're done. You know what I mean? You can, it's lights out, right? So I think any situation where somebody is trying to cause harm to you, is a bad situation, right? So anything that's not a controlled environment, right, is self-defense, in my opinion. What about you?
Yeah, I think you kind of took the all the best definitions out of my mouth. So, I mean, main thing, and I think the most important thing to understand is but difference between self-defense and also between combat sports, right? It's a very big difference, and there's a lot of crossover, right?
Yeah.
And then there's a lot of fluff you see in a lot of so-called self-defense schools. Just usually you hear him constantly saying just kick him in the groin, eye gouge him or something like that, right? And that's going to solve everything. It's not that you can't do things like that, but there's a big, I feel like since Krav Maga got really popular as well in the US, right? I feel like there's been more martial artists have become more aware of like self-defense schools, right? And I think we're starting to see a lot of other self-defense schools getting exposed. But at the same time, I think, some people are starting to see like certain combat sports aren't actually all that great for, real world situations, because a lot of times it's like it's your muscle memory, right? You're so focused on training against one person at a time that you tunnel vision and you hyper focus to one person, and you put yourself in certain positions, or scenarios where you're completely susceptible to getting, attacked by someone else, by multiple attackers. So certain arts, for example, like, say Japanese jiu-jitsu or something, right? you're like old school style Japanese jiu-jitsu, not like combat jiu-jitsu where you throw someone down, the way you're throwing them is different. You're not falling on the ground with them, right? You basically have both your knees up off the ground, maybe sometimes one knee on the ground, but you're usually not dropping to both knees right away,
Right.
right? So you have some way of at least like getting up, turning around, walking away quickly after just throwing someone down. So these are usually translate really well into fighting outside, and it's usually, I think the best way to describe it is just dirty fighting, right?
Yeah.
I think that's probably the best thing.
No rules fighting.
No rules, right?
Yeah.
Yep. All right. So, as far as self-defense, like I said, very important to understand the difference between combat sports and self-defense, right? So, one more thing, actually, I want to point out about that before we start talking about a couple other things is, awareness is one of the most important things when it comes to self-defense. It's very, very, very important. It's constantly stressed.
Yeah.
Constantly stressed in our classes, and in our training. I know with Lewis and I is, we were going up through the ranks, years ago in our own training. It was just, constantly the Japanese martial arts word called zanshin, right, which is awareness, and constantly just drilled into our heads. So now, like anytime I'm out in public, I position myself where my back doesn't face the front door. I'm usually somewhere along the wall. I want to have good line of sight of everyone. Keep just always being aware of what's around you, sizing people up, seeing what's like in their pocket. Is they carrying something in their bag? In their pocket. Is there a bulge on their shirt? Things like that. Yeah. So that's a huge aspect of that, and some martial arts completely ignore that because you don't need awareness when you're in a ring and you have like ropes or a cage or something to keep you in. You don't need to worry about the ref jumping you, right? You're worried about the guy you're fighting jumping you. That's it. All right. So I think that really defines the difference between combat sports and self-defense, right? Both have great aspects to them. Both also have negatives in certain areas, and we'll talk about that in a bit. All right. So again, I'm going to emphasize we're focusing on the legal aspects of self-defense. So if there is an art that teaches dimmak, or we will not talk about that. Death touch.
I love seeing those videos of the guys like, they just like using like the fingers or whatever, and the people are like,
oh yeah,
the Holy Spirit's going through them and stuff.
Oh yeah. And why is it always like they're always somewhere in Asia? It's either like East or South Asia somewhere. It's always.
Well, there's also that one group. I think it's in like Russia.
Oh yeah, you're right. Actually, there's a lot of Russian schools that do stuff like that.
Yeah, it's bad.
It feels like Chinese, Indian, and Russian schools. No offense to anyone, but I've seen a lot from what has just popped up on my social media over the last several years is a lot of really funny stuff like that. All right, so some of the styles we've mentioned. So I'm going to talk a little bit about when you talk about some styles, let's say Taekwondo, for example, right? You have ITF and WTF, right? You have Judo. What was it? I'm forgetting the organization names for Judo. There's a couple different, two main big ones as well. Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu obviously has, multiple. So that, even within like, Nimpo or Ninjutsu, right? There's several different organizations. And so depending, a lot of arts have, and Kung Fu as well, right? That's a very generic term when we talk about Kung Fu because that's just Chinese martial arts. So what we will do is we'll try to focus on the best versions of each category that we pick, right? Krav Maga as well, right, Lewis? You teach Krav Maga. Yep. God, there are so many terrible Krav schools out there because, that's just unfortunately, how it is because people just, completely make up their own stuff and, and it's an easy cash grab, but you have a great school. You have a good training program there. So in this case, what we'd want to do is, let's say we start talking about Taekwondo. We want to use some of the really good examples, not the McDojo schools, right?
Yeah.
So we'll use that, try to be fair to all the other different arts that are on there.
Okay.
All right. So now I'm going to start sharing my screen, and I want to explain what this tier stuff is. If anyone can hear a crying baby in the background, I apologize. Little one just woke up from a nap. Not very happy.
You ever hear that or watch that one scene from Hangover where the cop is like, "Shut that baby up."
No, I haven't.
So anytime I hear a crying baby, I think of that scene.
All right, here we go. What's the share tab audio? No audio on that tab. All right, you can see my screen, right, Lewis?
Yep.
All right. So here's the tier list. All right. So S, I'm going to talk about what these mean, right? So S is elite. And we are going to drag and drop into a tier, right? So anything that's in S tier is elite. We can always move something. Let's say I put it here, right? We can still move it if we change our mind later. A is very good. B is good or average. C is below average. And D is just terrible.
Okay.
So, let's just go through these one at a time from left to right. And then
So S at the top is what again?
this is like elite, like top level.
Oh, okay. So it
Yeah.
just goes in order.
Yeah, here, let me do this. Elite, it goes in order exactly. And down here is terrible.
Okay.
All right. And then B is obviously in the middle.
Okay.
All right. So first one, let's talk about Aikido. Again, we're talking about for self-defense. What are your impressions of Aikido for self-defense?
My impression of Aikido is it teaches you great body evasions. You know what I mean? Like if somebody's coming in with like a haymaker, or like let's say like if they have like a staff, right? It teaches you how to like dodge and die, get out of the way, basically. But the counters, in my opinion, are unrealistic to self-defense. Um, trying to throw your opponent and they're gonna roll out of it, and things like that. It's very fluid. I think it's
Mm.
great for a traditional martial art, but self-defense, no, I probably would put it um in the C category. I don't know about you, but what do you think?
Yeah, I think it's interesting, and again, like I am so tempted to think about the average Aikido school, right? And which for most of us who've been training in martial arts, and mind you, for anyone that doesn't know, Lewis and I both have, experience with Aiki Jiu-Jitsu.
Right,
So
which
it's
is a little
different from
different.
it's a little different, right? And
Yeah.
it's mainly in the implementation of the arts, and the philosophy is a lot older, right? It's not as peaceful, basically. So I think you made a great point about footwork. Um, and I think that the potential for it is great. I don't even want to talk about like Steven Seagal or anything in case that ever comes up. I'm not really a big fan.
I think
Um,
I think he's a nut job.
I think so. I think he knows some techniques, but I
Oh
think
yeah,
he's
yeah, definitely talented martial artist for sure. But I just think he's at the point where he's getting old and crazy. You know what
yeah,
I mean? So
yeah, yeah. But in general, I think that Aikido suffers universally from serious lack of pressure testing, and so for that, I'm going to be nice and I'm going to say below average. So
okay,
let's throw that in C.
yeah. So we both agree there.
All right. Next one is Brazilian Jiu Jitsu.
Fantastic for groundwork, obviously. But I haven't experienced one Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu school yet.
Hmm.
Maybe one. Um, that practices Brazilian Jiu Jitsu for self defense, which means multiple attackers, attacker with a weapon, um, and things of that nature. It's usually one on one, you know, on a nice surface, right? Um, Teaching tournament rules. Hey, you can do this, but
Yeah.
you can't do that. Um, I would say, however, I obviously rank it above Aikido
Hmm.
for self defense, real life self defense. So I would say for me, um, average.
Yeah, I think I'm definitely struggling between average and very good. I don't think it actually quite fits into very good. And again, I'm in complete agreement with you with what you've said. I do have some experience with Brazilian jiu-jitsu,
Now,
and yes.
no, I was just gonna say, that's why MMA fighters, professional MMA fighters, they just don't train in Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu, right?
Hmm,
They train in the ground art and they train in the striking art, whether it's MMA. Some of them have karate experience, taekwondo experience, whatever.
yeah,
But you don't really have one MMA fighter just train in Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu. You know what I mean?
right. Oh,
So
I have MMA listed here as a separate category. That's going to be an interesting one because we'll have to
okay,
talk about what defines MMA.
okay,
Yeah, I agree. I agree with that. But yeah, Brazilian Jiu Jitsu, I think it's great against focusing on someone, one versus one. I think
mhm,
it's really effective in that aspect. I think that people who've never rolled against a high level BJJ practitioner don't truly understand how hard it is to one get away from them and how hard it is. Like you're not going to stand up, right? If they want you down in a certain position, they'll put you in that position. The problem is you compromise your position because you're on the ground, right? And it's you know sure there's some stand up in there, but the majority of it is ground focused. And for that specifically, because we're talking about real world self defense, I'm going to put that at B as an average.
okay,
So both agree there as well.
awesome.
Boxing, I feel like you and I are probably going to have some different opinions on this one. Let's because I mean in general people have very different opinions about boxing. Boxing is actually very controversial in the martial arts world. So
I think it's great
yeah,
for striking art.
yeah,
Because boxing, you learn how to hit to all parts of the body, right? It's not just the face, right? Um, the footwork in boxing is amazing, in my opinion. Um, so, but there's no groundwork. There's no throws. There's no, obviously joint manipulation, things like that, right? So, um, oh man, I'm struggling with this one. I wish there was a category between very good and average. 'Cause that's where I'd probably
yeah.
put it. I don't know. I guess I would have to put it in average.
Yeah, it's certainly a tough one, right? And here's the thing: is like we just put Brazilian Jiu Jitsu in average, right? And to put boxing there, or even to potentially put it above it, it's a bit tough
Yeah.
because the thing about boxing is you have weight classes, right? And it's an art where you're just punching, and so if you're trying to defend yourself against a really big guy. Let's say there's a bouncer, that's harassing you, that's out of line, or someone else that's just really big, um, you know, and you try to punch him. I mean, and you're a lightweight, and they're obviously big heavyweight. Where's your boxing going to take you?
Right.
But I agree with you. But they have phenomenal footwork, phenomenal conditioning. Boxing is an excellent core skill to have. I have a few years of boxing experience, and I think it's not valued enough by other martial artists. I think they laugh at it, and there's a joke that I'll just kick them in the legs and they'll be done with. It's like, yeah, no, good luck trying to kick them in the leg while they're punching you in the face,
Right.
and they're probably gonna hurt you more than you're hurting them.
It's always a
Most,
what if. It's always a what if.
yeah, it's
Everything.
always a matter, right?
Yeah.
But I actually think I would want to put it in A only because you can do it standing up, and I think the main difference between, I'm not saying it's a better art than BJJ. I'm not really comparing them, but as far as for the self defense perspective, I personally would place boxing at A just because you have excellent footwork, excellent conditioning,
Yeah.
and yeah, it's a tough one.
I see your point. I
Yeah.
see your point there. Yeah.
So
So put
I'll
it
leave.
put it in A.
Put an A. All right.
Yeah.
All right. Well, we'll do that. That is a tough one. I mean, and again, if anyone wants to argue that, we can easily make the case, to A or B, somewhere in between.
Right.
All right, capoeira. This is a tough one.
Um.
Eddie from like Tekken.
Yeah. That was one of my favorite characters, by the way. I used to kick ass on that with that character. Uh,
You want me to start on this one?
yeah, go ahead.
All right, I'm gonna put that at. I think I'm gonna put that at like D. Now, here's the thing. I don't know a whole lot about it, and you know, it's not very common. A lot of it is I know that it's very difficult. They have a similar like it takes a very very long time to ramp up to rank up. Sorry, one of my students actually George as well. You know,
I
George.
didn't even know they had ranks.
Oh yeah, they do. They use like it's like a rope that they have around like a almost like a sash.
Hmm.
So Rocky does it, and George, and you know them both. They both do capoeira. Apparently, coincidentally, at the same school. By the way, they started doing it at the same school.
Interesting.
So from what I hear, it's very the conditioning, very 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 tough conditioning, very tough. So you have that. And I think just for the conditioning aspect, I can't even put it down into D. I have to put it into C. But as far as like, you know, using it in real world situation, I just don't see it. And this is maybe it's based out of my ignorance, but I just don't see it. I don't see enough.
Yeah, I probably agree there. I see it more as an art of dancing and ritual,
Yeah.
not for really self defense. So I'd probably put it in. I me personally, I'd probably put it in D.
Okay. All right. Let's put in D. All right. Next one is external kung fu, and you're gonna see there's another one too after that at the bottom. It says internal kung fu. So what is external, right? External kung fu is, for example, Shaolin martial arts, Wing Chun, Shuai Jiao. If anyone doesn't know Shuai Jiao is, that's where Japanese jiu-jitsu comes from. It's the Chinese art of grappling. If you have not seen that, I didn't put it on here because it's Japanese jiu-jitsu is just more commonly known, but it's still pretty much the same thing. But if anyone has not heard of Shuai Jiao, highly recommend looking it up online. So Shuai Jiao, Wing Chun, Shaolin, and Sanda is another one. So Sanda is Chinese kickboxing. Um, there's a guy that poses as a Shaolin martial artist, and I think it's like one championship. I think that's what it is.
Mhm.
Lewis, I don't know how much you ever watch any like MMA from like Asia or something, but I think it's one FC. But anyway, there's a guy that got really popular, and he mostly does Sanda, and he poses as like a Shaolin monk, even though he's not. But Sanda is really good, and that's what started getting really popular to Western fans. So external kung fu is a lot more of like I really appreciate it. I don't have any experience with anything like that other than we can say Shuai Jiao because it's again almost jujitsu is almost identical to it. So I'm gonna put that as like um and you take into consider like Wing Chun as well. I think it has some good aspects in there. That's a tough one. I think I'm gonna put that as either B or A. For me personally, Lewis, what do you think? I don't know if you're familiar with any of those.
Yeah, I'm familiar with. I actually have a friend of mine who owns a kung fu school in Owings Mills. Um,
Oh, okay, wow, it's close
he
to
actually
me.
has two locations, and they pressure test a F ton. So I forget exactly which style he does. So I'm not too familiar the differences between the styles in Chinese martial arts. I obviously know a little bit because of my background, but I'm
Mm,
not like really immersed in it. But I would say, yeah, I would put it in at least average.
okay. All right, I will agree with you there. And now with that, we're gonna skip the next one. Let's talk about internal kung fu now, right? So, like, what does that mean? So, internal kung fu is more like, your other arts, like, uh, what is it like, crane or tiger or some of the other like more internal. As they talk about like your tai chi things like that, baji quan, uh and what was another one, bagua. So things like that, right? So that's usually when people talk about, like, you just say the word kung fu. That's usually what I feel like the average person usually thinks about.
Um,
So,
I would probably put that. I think that kind of stuff is great for your internal well-being. You know what I mean? And your spirit, your soul, keeping you balanced. But as far as this just self-defense aspect, I don't think it's good at all. So I probably put it in D.
hmm. Yeah, I'm conflicted between putting that as below average or terrible, because I feel like, with some of the, again, wanting to focus on some of the better aspects of some of these arts, right? Um, I've there's some of them have some really, really crazy conditioning. And I feel like any art that just conditions you really well, or a school, I should even say, conditions you really well, is already preparing you really well for like self-defense situation.
Hmm. Yeah.
Because it's more than just technique. And I know
Yeah.
kung fu has a lot of kung fu arts have a very heavy emphasis on strong conditioning, and I feel
Hmm.
like some of the more internal kung fu arts have that more than some of the external kung fu arts, for the exception of, we're going to leave Shaolin out of that. But I don't know. I think that's tough. So I think I would put that in C. I don't think that it's terrible. I think there's some things in there that could be useful, but I'm willing to compromise on that.
Okay. Um, yeah, so am I. I'm kind of torn in between C or D, you know.
All right. Well, let's throw that in C. All right. So it looks like we got a question. Conditioning. So conditioning. So certain things are, certain arts, and we'll talk about this again. Actually, even when we get to Muay Thai, is uh, you know when you're conditioning, some people, will punch into, like, bags of rice, or some people punch, or makiwara boards, or, even like hand chops, is, knife hands into makiwara boards. But you see a lot of Japanese martial artists doing stuff like that. Any type of conditioning where you're strengthening, like, your bones, and you're actually kind of crushing your bones a little bit to rebuild them back stronger. It's tough on the body. This stuff like this was a lot more prevalent in, more traditional times, but especially in times of war. But nowadays, we think you do stuff like that and you can have arthritis by the age of like 35.
Right.
So to a degree. Lewis, what do you think?
Yeah, I think you hit the nail on the head. I don't think I could have explained it better myself.
All right, yeah, good question. Thanks for the question. All right, next one, freestyle wrestling.
Uh, yeah, I think it's good. I would put that in, kind of like in the same category as BJJ. They're almost very similar, but obviously some wrestling is different. Like you have sambo, you have all different types of wrestling. You know what I mean? But and we're talking about freestyle, so it could be like anything, right? So,
Oh, I've got
uh,
sambo at the very end.
oh, okay, okay.
Yeah. But freestyle is more of what you'll see in, like, high school and college.
Yeah, I think it's good stuff for sure. But it's in a controlled environment, right? There's a referee. They're usually teaching you how to win matches for points or championships and things like that. But I say it's also good. I would put it in the same category as BJJ.
Yeah, I think, to be fair, because a lot of what we said about BJJ applies to wrestling as well.
Yeah.
Personally, I think wrestling is a great skill as well. I kind of have that up there with boxing in my mind, but again, it's, the most of I think the main difference between wrestling and BJJ is that, wrestlers are better at their stand up, as far as a pure wrestler versus a pure BJJ.
Hmm.
So in that case, I could make the case to put at A, but I'm okay with putting it at B. So I think wherever you and I agree on that,
Yeah.
I think so. I'll throw that in B then.
I think when we get through this, I don't think there's gonna be a lot of A's or S's. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Because
Right. right?
Somebody said it on on my Instagram page. Is there isn't one art that is perfect for self defense, which is true. You know what I mean?
Yeah,
So
yeah,
you
right.
need to combine a few arts to make yourself a well rounded martial artist for self defense. You know what I mean?
Yeah,
So
yeah, very, very true. Um, all right, I'm looking at the clock here, and it looks like we got about 8 minutes. I'm okay with
hey,
going a few minutes over. We got about.
we can go over, baby.
All right, all right. Well, let's try and hit the rest of these while we can still. So Jeet Kune Do is next. Admittedly I don't know a whole lot about Jeet Kune Do as far as like at a personal level. I've met people that have studied it. I've seen a lot about it online. I know Black Belt Magazine loves posting about Jeet Kune Do. But again, from my impression, I think they've strayed very, very far from what Bruce Lee was trying to teach back in the day. I think there's a lot of something that a lot of people have turned into like Bruce Lee wannabes, right? And they kind of lost the essence of what the art really is, and they try to mimic everything he's done. But in essence, Jeet Kune Do is finding your own style,
Mhm.
and I think that's just a lot for people that are new to martial arts to grasp.
Right.
So correct anyone can correct me if I'm wrong. Like I said, I'm not a practitioner. I don't know a whole lot about it, but just as a martial artist, that's the little bit I do know. I'm not too savvy on keeping that somewhere up high. I do love their footwork, though. I will say that. Um, a lot of their footwork, or some of their drills, actually, are some things that I do utilize in some rarely, but occasionally, like in some of my classes.
Yeah, I know very little about it myself as well. Basically, as much as I know about Bruce Lee and the things he was doing, and that's pretty much the gist of what I know about it. So I couldn't make a honest decision on it.
Yeah, I think it's a C in my opinion.
Okay, yeah, we'll go with that.
All right. Jiu-jitsu. So for those wondering, this is Japanese jiu-jitsu, not Brazilian. Lewis, I'm gonna let you start off with this one.
That one goes above the S. No, I'm just kidding. You know, obviously we're kind of biased. You know, that's what we train in heavy.
Hmm.
But if you think about Japanese jiu-jitsu now, like don't get me wrong, like in every art, there are schools that do it really well, and there are schools that do it really, really bad. You know what I mean?
Yeah. Remember,
And
we're gonna focus on the best examples of all of these to make it
okay, true.
fair.
All right.
Yep. Yep.
All right, so best examples. I think Japanese jiu-jitsu is amazing because it has everything. It has throws, it has joint locks, it has grappling, it has weapons, weapons offense, weapons defense. It's really well rounded. It's basically the first MMA if you think about
Yeah.
it.
Yes.
You know what I mean?
I've said that many times myself.
It's the first MMA to ever exist. You know what I mean? In my opinion. So I would definitely put that in A.
Yeah, I would do the same. Highly agree. A, there's a slight case for making that S. I think that there is a little bit of lack. That's pretty a lack of hard pressure testing in the majority of jujitsu schools.
Yeah.
You know, I know we do a lot of pressure testing at my school, and
Mhm.
we kind of combine a few other arts to kind of complement and update some aspects of jujitsu, right? Like if you're supposed to be doing hand-to-hand combat, we're kind of updating some of the way that we do some of those strikes. But
But if
still,
if we're going with the best case scenario, maybe it is an S.
yeah, that's a tough one. I know picking these out earlier, I already thought in my mind of which one I think might be S. I wasn't considering this one, but I think it actually might be, especially because it has a lot of bases covered. So
Yeah.
I'm gonna throw that up in S, and I think I'm okay with putting that in S.
Okay.
All right. So we agree that that's an S and that's not an A.
That's an S.
All right, that's an S. All right, next one, judo.
Judo. Um, I think judo is great for self defense, right? Um, especially because judo really teaches uh a smaller, like, a smaller person can throw a bigger person, right?
Yeah, yeah,
um it's all about mechanics. We have females that are 5'2" that can throw a 6'2" guy, you know what I mean, with almost no effort, because it's all about mechanics. um so whew, that's tough,
I-
man.
look, I'm gonna help you out with this one. I think it very much deserves to be an A. I think judo has amazing throws. I think in the environment that they train in, they have better throws than we do in jujitsu, right?
Oh, for
Japanese
sure.
jujitsu.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah, because I mean the way they train, it is definitely one of the hardest martial arts out there. But again, judo was what it was originally, called kano jujitsu, right? It was jujitsu, and it
Right.
changed to be in a competitive, flat surface environment. And
Hmm.
again, we're talking about for the purposes of self-defense. You're not always on a flat surface, or dry or things like that, right? So I do like, for the same reasons you mentioned, but also, they cover stand up and they cover on the ground as well. So I think that definitely deserves to be at an A.
Yep, I would agree.
Yeah, I agree. Sydney in the comments mentioned that there's no striking in judo, and yeah, for sure. All right, next one, Kali. This is also known as Eskrima and Arnis. They're all the same art. So this is for anyone that's not familiar. This is like stick fighting. I forget the exact measurement of the stick. I think it's like 1.5 feet or something like that, maybe 2 feet.
So I would put that one in very good.
I agree.
Because not only is it teaching you, obviously, stick fighting, but even without the sticks, it's teaching you hand to hand fighting. It's teaching you striking. It's also can teach you knife as well.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? So I've never trained in it. Only actually maybe like one time. But from what I understand about it, it doesn't just serve for stick fighting. You know what I mean? It serves multiple purposes.
Yeah, I actually met a guy right outside my dojo, like 2 weeks ago, that started, asked me if I trained in martial arts. I told me, I was like, yeah, this is my school. We're in the parking lot, and turned out, he is, just got his third degree in black belt in Kali, and he's interested in, showing us some of, some stuff, kind of swapping, exchanging knowledge. So I'm really looking forward to that. That should be in a few weeks, sometime in the beginning of September, actually. And by the way,
Nice.
you are welcome to join us if you're down. It'll be either on a Tuesday or Thursday. I'll tell you more about that offline. But yeah,
Okay.
I agree. Keep that as an A.
Awesome.
All right. Next one, karate. So lots of different forms of karate. You have Okinawan, Shotokan, Kyokushin, the got Shorin-ryu, Shito-ryu. There's so many different types, right? So I want to use some of the best examples, and we've actually seen karate used even in MMA, like UFC, right? I mean, you have Lyoto Machida, right?
Hmm.
Stephen Wonderboy Thompson. You had some really elite level people. A lot of them, and then Georges St. Pierre. A lot of people had came from a karate background.
Hmm.
So I think that a lot of people sleep on that, especially in the MMA community.
Yep.
Um, but I think karate is covers a lot of different bases as well. They don't have any really like ground fighting techniques,
Right.
and but they do have a lot of them have good conditioning and stuff. So
Yeah, I
I
was
I
just gonna.
would put that between A or B.
Yeah, I was just gonna say that. Great conditioning. You know, um, Obviously, the good karate disciplines teach you how to strike extremely hard,
Mm.
and fast. And some of them also do, throws and things like that too. So I would say that's an A.
Okay. Yeah, there's a style, I forget what it's called. It came from Kyokushin and actually mixes judo. One of my students actually used to train in that, and I always forget the name. Um, but yeah, it was the creator who's still alive today, but he literally combined judo and Kyokushin and created a new style of karate, Enshin karate. So if anyone's not familiar, highly recommend looking them up. they were very active in, the golden age of martial arts in the U.S. I usually refer to that as like the 60s and 70s. And these guys were just killers. Definitely look up videos of that on YouTube.
Okay.
All right. Next one, Kenjutsu. So why did I put Kenjutsu in here, right? We can say Kendo as well, Kenjutsu, whatever, but it's the art of the sword. How does that apply to modern self-defense?
Well, I think if you take kenjutsu or any type of sword art, I think it can help you in the sense of your other martial art because it teaches like precision and focus and all those great attributes. Obviously, you're not walking around with a sword in your hand. You're not walking around. You can make the argument like, well, the techniques could be transferred over to a stick or baseball bat. But again, you're not walking around with a stick or baseball bat. You know what I mean?
Yeah. Right.
Um, so I wouldn't say it's terrible for self defense, but I would say it's below average.
Yeah, I think that's a fair assessment. I think that, again, it depends on, let's say if it's raining, right? Even if it's lightly raining, and I don't really care about, some drizzle, a little bit of rain. Like I walk through it. I don't care. But if it, for me, well, for us who've trained with various different weapons, I would love to use that as an excuse to walk around with an umbrella, right? In case I need it. So it's something that could certainly come in handy. It's not something you'll always have. You may not always have a tool around you, but the art of the sword is more than just using a sword. It's being able to use anything in your hand like a weapon,
Mm,
right? Kind of similar to Kali, but I still find Kali a lot more um, like useful for modern self defense in Kenjutsu. So I
yeah,
agree. That goes in C.
yeah.
All right, I'm gonna let you have this one again from the first opinion, Krav Maga.
Krav Maga. Um,
I hope your
I would,
students are watching this.
yeah, right. Krav Maga. Well, I honestly try to get them to go into the Japanese Jiu-Jitsu. So, um, I, so in my opinion, but so I'm kind of biased. So I'm going off of
Sure.
what I experienced. I think, uh, my Japanese Jiu-Jitsu students, um, and no offense to anybody that does my Krav Maga, um, I think the Japanese Jiu-Jitsu program is harder. Now, my Krav Maga people, they pressure test more. Okay. So I don't know, man. It's tough. Because Krav Maga is basically, without making fun of it, it's kind of like a bastard art. It has a little bit of everything. It has boxing, it has Japanese jiu-jitsu, it has um, judo. It has a little bit of everything. So obviously I'd put it in S or A. So I'm gonna let you pick. You know, it's definitely an S or A in my opinion. You know what I mean? So I'll let you choose.
Yeah, well, I think it's actually a little bit tough, right? Because here's the thing: the original Krav Maga was a militarized system that was used for the purposes of military, and in Israel where it was used, you know, I- from what I've heard is from what the rest of the world has is not the same, is not the real thing, right? And it's kind of been translated as to a more of a self-defense system that's more compliant with the law, you
Mhm.
know, outside of the original version of or versions or whatever of Krav Maga. Now, if you ask
Right.
me, I don't
The
really know
original
what.
version was a killing art.
Right,
You know what I mean?
exactly.
Yeah.
Yep. So again, I mean, I agree with you. It's it's a hybridized system of collection of different other martial arts. It's just funny when I've seen a lot of Krav Maga techniques. I'm just like, we've done all of these, every single one, either like
Yep.
through jujitsu or maybe through like my boxing experience or something, and obviously some of the BJJ. But in a nutshell, your average school is going to be based off of what your teacher knows, right? And
Mhm.
again, in this case, we're thinking about the best case. So I actually think it's an A, just because I feel like jujitsu covers more areas than Krav with self defense. But I think Krav makes a good case for being like upper echelon A, in between S and A.
Yep, I would agree.
All right. So I'm going to throw that in A then.
Mhm.
MMA, right? So what is MMA, right? And before anyone gets like really philosophical about, mixed martial arts, I mean, let's face it, when you say MMA, most people usually think of the same thing. Most people, not everyone, right? Which is like what you see in like UFC, right? So this is the more modern version that we're talking about here. Usually, this is a mixture of like, Muay Thai, Sambo, wrestling, boxing, Brazilian Jiu Jitsu, karate. Usually out of those arts, or or some of them is usually what MMA is comprised of.
Mhm.
So.
Um, I guess I'll let you pick first.
Okay. I think that I'm going to put MMA as A, believe it or not, because I think that even though they focus on, fighting like one person at a time, again, like, you can have a karate background in there as well, which is, you have some more traditional roots in there, which shows you more than just, fighting, in one on one, and you're still building up your awareness. There's other aspects to your training as well. So some MMA fighters, I'm sure they probably had some weapons training as well, because it's a mixed martial art.
Mhm.
But it is such an effective martial art, right? You learn different skills. Like, you are literally a walking weapon. The only reason I wouldn't put it in S category is because it doesn't require weapons training. And I think, in order for you to have like be an elite category for self-defense, you have to know how to use weapons.
That's a great
So
point. I didn't even think about that because I was going to put it in an S. But
mm,
yeah, you hit the nail on the head. Um, with the weapons. So I would put it in A.
all right. Yeah, I had a funny comment there. Sev Ackerman says, haven't heard of MMA since Bully Beatdown. Yeah, put that up on the screen. I don't know what happened to that. I stopped seeing those showing up on my YouTube. I used to enjoy watching those. All right, next one, kickboxing. So this is just your regular kickboxing. Let's say like American kickboxing.
um, like, all right. So kickboxing as it is like now, or kickboxing as it was like back in like the 70s and 80s. Which
Oh,
one are you talking?
that's a great distinction. Wow, you're right, because it was completely different back in 70s and 80s.
Yeah.
Completely different. I mean, one of the heavyweights, I forget his name. I mean, he beat Chuck Norris, kickboxer. I forgot his name.
Was it Bill
I,
Wallace?
no, no, not Bill Wallace. I thought Bill Wallace was he a kickboxer? I thought he was.
Yeah. Yeah.
Oh wow. Oh no, it wasn't him, and I don't think he was a heavyweight either. If I'm not
I
mistaken.
actually spoke to uh, Jeff Smith today, which he was I think a two-time kickboxing world champion.
Oh
Um,
wow,
I had a Zoom meeting with him,
that's cool.
um, but yeah, if we're talking about back in the 70s and 80s, then I would say it's very good. I would probably align it with karate in a sense. But if we're talking about in today's world, which I assume we're talking about, I think it's gone away from its roots. It's more of a workout.
Yeah,
Um,
and let's talk about that from today. I guess it wouldn't make
yeah,
sense to talk about it from the past, so
yeah,
I would put that as a C,
yeah. I would say it's a C as
at
well.
least a C, at least
Yeah,
maybe a D.
yeah, yeah. I think it's funny. Like the 99% of the clientele for a kickboxing class is females, and obviously there's nothing wrong with that. But I'll get in discussions with females about and they think they're learning self defense, but they're not. You're not learning self defense punching and kicking a bag. You know
Right.
what I mean?
Right. Right.
you need to be pressure tested. You need to be in sparring situations. You need to, you know, pressure test with weapons, things like that. So,
Yeah.
but yeah,
You're right. And actually, with that having said, I think I'm thinking putting that down into D, into
yeah,
terrible. Because again, we don't see that level of kickboxing like we used to before. You're
no,
absolutely right.
it's
It's
changed.
yeah, and I can't even think of a best case scenario of kickboxing anymore. I mean, I live in an area that's inflated with martial arts schools, and I don't know of a single kickboxing school that teaches it out of other than like a fitness.
Yep. Yeah,
So I think it
yeah,
should.
I'm sure there's people out there that we don't know about. They're teaching original kickboxing, maybe in their garage or whatever, their house. You know what I mean? They're teaching it the old way, but they're almost far and few between.
Yeah, yeah, for sure. So I'm gonna skip a few. Well, we'll circle back to some of the others, but Muay Thai, because we're just talking about kickboxing. What about Muay Thai? What are your thoughts?
I would put that in very good. The striking in that art is absolutely badass.
Yeah,
So uh, I would definitely, put that in line with karate for sure.
yeah. I think that Muay Thai, is I mean, you literally turn your whole body into a weapon. I
Yep.
mean, your elbows are devastating, your shins, your knees. I mean, the conditioning is no joke. It's so tough, but it is. I would say, as far as like you know, a martial art that does not include any weapons and focus purely on one versus one, I think Muay Thai is probably the deadliest martial art where you know you're just using your own body.
Yeah.
All right, you got just a couple left here. So another one, ninjutsu.
Are we talking? We're talking about ninjutsu in the sense of like Bansen Shukai ninjutsu? Are we talking ninjutsu in the sense of Togakure-ru ninjutsu? Like, what are we talking about here?
I'm glad you've made that distinction, right? And so I want to give a little bit of like preface this a little bit because anytime I've seen like other guys, like other martial arts YouTube channels that have done martial arts tier lists, they've always put like ninjutsu way, way towards the bottom somewhere, right? And a
Yeah.
lot of that is because they know nothing about it. And what do? If you don't know about something, you look at it online. And what do you see online when you type in ninjutsu? You see a bunch of terrible, terrible videos, um people trying to spar that just in
Not
really
even
weird moments.
not even spar. It's like I don't even know what would you call it. It would be like,
Yeah,
you know, very slow kata, you know,
right,
people
right,
moving
people
like
are
this,
confusing.
and
Exactly, yeah. So it doesn't exactly do it justice, but because we're talking about the best examples, right? When I think about ninjutsu, right, and you and I have trained in this in nimpo. Majority of our hand-to-hand combat is really jujitsu,
Mhm.
right? And now when I think of ninjutsu, I'm thinking about the strategies, right? And I'm going to say something really controversial here, right? Now the other difference is that there's a lot of different weapons, in ninjutsu. What are you also learning? Things like concealment, disguise, learning how to walk a bit quieter, staying under the radar, and then it comes with other skills, other skill sets as well, right? And for
Mhm.
anyone that sees, nimpo, I'm not saying going if you go and assassinate someone, you're at the bar and someone's bothering you and you slip in some poison when they're not looking. I'm not talking about that, right? But again, I mean, there's so many little things in there I think that align with modern self-defense so well.
Yeah.
um that you want to fly, you don't want to be caught. You don't want to stand out, then think about what kind of clothes you're wearing, right? Don't wear something like a shirt like I'm wearing, right? Don't wear something with a pattern, a strong design, strong colors, things that stand out. Cover your cheekbones from
Mm.
CCTV. A lot of things like that. And these are things that you should be learning if you're studying in ninjutsu or in nimpo, right? How to stay under the radar, how to avoid being detected. I'm not saying developing like superhuman skills or anything, but I think that aspect of ninjutsu, the strategy side, um, and all the different secret like weapons and everything you learn how to use. I think that's S category if we're talking about, the best example. And yes, that's me being biased, but that bias is also because I know what that training is really like.
Cindy said definitely yes because it has kunoichi jitsu in it. Um, for those of you that don't know, kunoichi jitsu is that's basically the art of a female ninja. Um, but there's like an inside joke to that. So, um, but yeah. So basically, you're talking about Bansen Shukai Ninjutsu, like that type of stuff. So,
Sort of. It's more of like
yeah,
I guess I'm sorry to cut you off, but I guess it's I want to tread that line very carefully, right? Not
it's
necessarily old school,
military strategy.
right? The way it should be taught by the big organizations today in Nimpo that are focusing on some of the wrong aspects of the training, right?
Yeah,
But I feel like, like how I teach it at my school, for example, I think that in terms of self-defense, I think it covers all the areas.
yeah. So I would put that in average, just because if anybody doesn't know what real ninjutsu is, if you're really into martial arts in general, you need to read the Bansen Shukai. Now you can get it on Amazon. And gentleman by Anthony Cummins translated this manual, and it's basically a CIA manual, right? Not modern CIA, but like how things were back in the day. It's written by a ninja or shinobi, um, and it was basically he made this manual so he can get hired for work, as like a operative, right? A secret operative. A lot of what's in that book can still be used today. Just like what you were just talking about, like how to not stand out, how to not make your body stink, how
Mm.
to um I don't know, how to see far distances using
Stay
simple
warm,
tools,
right? And
how to stay
using like
warm.
hot
Yeah,
stones and putting them inside your clothes and laying, flat down on the ground with the
right.
stones in between, right? Using like things like that. I mean, just the strategy side of ninjutsu, I think, but again, and that's more of survival. That's not self-defense,
Yeah.
but
Yeah.
um,
Um
yeah, I'm okay with either actually, um, I think because of the hand-to-hand side of it, now that I think about it in retrospect, I don't think it's actually S category. I don't think that their hand-to-hand combat is actually as good, and most of it borrows from Japanese jiu-jitsu anyway.
yeah.
Not really borrows, but it really is jiu-jitsu. I don't want to
Well,
get into the aspect, but
to also when the last time I went to Japan, which was this past October, November, uh my our sensei, Ron Sensei, made a good point, and he said if you ever dive deep into Togakuru, which is a ninjutsu school, right? There's really not a lot of hand to hand stuff in it.
right.
It's more about strategy. There's a little bit of hand to hand stuff, but he said that's only if you get caught during your mission. You need to learn how to defend yourself, and none of the techniques are usually used for killing or immobilizing an opponent. A lot of the techniques are just to get away.
Hmm.
So, and I didn't think about that, right? And all the years I've been studying, Togakureru, I never thought about. Yeah, he's right. Like there really isn't a lot of like hand to hand jujitsu techniques in that school. You know what I mean? It's just it has the bare minimum just in case you get caught during your mission, um, to get to safety, right? Um,
Yeah, I think that deserves to be an A category. I think just for that especially, I think there's so much that people don't understand about it, and I think what they see about it online is just unfortunately,
the
not that
worst.
great. The
Yeah, the
worst,
worst.
yeah. But those of us who have an inside perspective on what's really there, I think that's A.
Okay, sounds good.
All right, Taekwondo. You have a
Uh,
background in Taekwondo more than I do. I had a bit of a background, um,
yeah.
but
So
I would be into that.
obviously, different taekwondo schools train differently.
Yeah.
I went to like an Olympic style taekwondo school.
Mm.
So um, I got in an altercation once, really bad one, and it was bad, and I didn't know how to defend myself from the ground, um, because I only knew taekwondo at the time. Um, I probably put that in, honestly, like from man, uh, it's either D or C. I mean, B or C. Sorry, it's either B or C. Um,
Yeah,
for
I
me.
agree with that. Again, we're thinking about the best case scenario for for these, and a lot of them are. What really changed my mind was when I got introduced to a school in DC that has a very long history of competition, and some of the teachers there, fought with Bruce Lee as well in the past. So they've been around. They've won a lot of trophies. That school. One of my students is almost a grandmaster there um, at that TKD school, and he's been training with me for almost 3 years now. Actually, it's coming up in a few weeks. It'll be 3 years, but that I realize that there's a whole other side to Taekwondo as far as they can punch really well. They have really good. I mean, not punch really well. They have very quick punches. I'll say, then not like a boxer's punch, but obviously great kicks, phenomenal footwork, very very fast. My main thing is again, um, I think that the lack of having a more all-around skill set, for talking about just pure TKD, I think that should be no, higher than C.
Okay.
And for me, I think that's from a best case scenario for the purposes of self-defense.
Yeah.
And the last one on the list is Sambo. So this is interesting. So Sambo is like a mix of like it's like Russian MMA basically. It's like wrestling, judo, and like boxing mixed together with uh, some like locks, like wrist locks and joint locks and stuff like that. So it's very interesting. We don't really see it too much out here in the U.S. I know that, you know, Habib Nurmagomedov, and some of these other Dagestani fighters in UFC started making sambo, Russian sambo, really popular the
Hmm.
last 4 or 5 years. And I think that's where Americans started becoming more aware of what that's like. But
Hmm.
it's hard for me to rate it because outside of them, I don't really know a whole lot about it.
Yeah, I know a little bit about it because my first Japanese, uh, jujitsu ninpo teacher also was a
Oh, he
uh,
was. Wow.
sambo wrestler.
Wow.
So I would probably put it in average.
Okay. I
Yeah,
will definitely take your word for that one.
yeah.
Wow. All right. So one last glance at this then. Anything on here you think you might want to change? Right. So let's read this off from the top. Right. So S category elite, we have Japanese jiu-jitsu.
Mm-hmm.
A category, which is very good, we have boxing, judo, Kali, Eskrima, Arnis. So it's all the same thing. All the as far as karate, it's just we just pick out of the best, right?
Right.
We didn't specify which we think is the best form, but karate in general.
Mm-hmm.
Krav Maga, MMA, Muay Thai, and ninjutsu. B for average, we did Brazilian Jiu Jitsu, external Kung Fu. For anyone that missed that before, external is like Sanda, Shaolin, Wing Chun, Shuai Jiao.
Mm-hmm.
Freestyle wrestling and Sambo. Below average C, we chose Aikido, internal Kung Fu. So that's some of the other, more common, typical, flowy Kung Fu styles that, we tend to think of more out here in the West when we say Kung Fu, right? Bagua, Tai Chi, Qigong, things like that. Jeet Kune Do, Kenjutsu, and Taekwondo. And then D, which is terrible, we picked capoeira and kickboxing. And I'm actually tempted to kind of take capoeira out of D terrible just because they have really, really intense conditioning. And I just can't see that being, terrible. I think that should at least go to C.
Okay.
Let's change that one.
Yeah, I would agree there with all of that.
Yeah, I think that this is different. This list from a lot of what else that you see on the internet as far as tier lists. I think that for you and I, who are focused a lot more on arts from a combative sense, right? Kind of like combatives. I think it gives us a unique perspective into the effectiveness of certain types of martial arts, and in actual situations. And maybe on another episode, you and I can talk more in detail about some of our situations, that we've had to encounter in the past. But yeah, I mean, if anyone has any, your opinions, your feedback on these, you think there's anything on here that should be different, let us know in the comments.
Yep.
As Lewis said in the past, even if you don't like it, you hate us, let us know. It still drives our what was it? It drives our what up?
It drives up our algorithm.
Algorithms. That was the word. That's a special word.
um, Leonard Williams says, thanks for the martial arts education. So Leonard is a parent at my studio.
Oh, awesome.
So he has, a couple kids training with us. But it's, I think, and this is why I think you and I started doing this, is to obviously talk martial arts and talk about a passion of ours, but also to educate, you know, because a lot of people, when they walk into my school or any school for that matter, they don't really know what they're looking for or what they want. Usually they have some type of problem, right? Um, whether that's hey, I need to learn self-defense because I got mugged last year, or
Right. I've
I
got that too.
I'm looking for something to stay fit because I hate the gym.
Yeah.
Or, in a parent's case, I really want my kids to be successful. They're kind of being lazy. They're playing video games, and I want them to get off the video games and things like that. So I think a lot of people, when they look for martial arts schools to train at, I think they need to do a little bit more research about what they want before they dive in headfirst into something. Um, to make sure that is truly what they want. You know what I mean? You don't want to get stuck at a school where you're like, this is not what I thought it was going to be. You know what I mean? Sev uh, said Sambo should be up one more. It's pretty brutal when it comes to their sparring. Well, he also said gets really good pressure test from what can be observed. Yeah, and might be right.
Yeah.
I don't have a lot of experience in Sambo, so
Same.
if they do a lot of pressure testing, then yeah, maybe it should be up one more.
Yeah, that's a great point. I think pressure testing, right? That's the key phrase in anything, right? And even though we put this tier list together, and I mean, doing stuff like this is, like it can be fun. We're speaking from a general sense. We're trying to pick the best cases, and of each one, but it's also limited to our own experiences. And also, as a disclaimer to anyone else that maybe you're just chiming in now for a few minutes ago, and you weren't here for the when we first started putting this tier list together earlier in this video. This is focused purely on modern self-defense. So we're not putting down any of the arts in like a combative sense or overall effectiveness, or some may say, oh well, my teacher teaches it better than the school down the street. But at the end of the day, this is just from our experience.
Yeah, yeah, and
So
you might not agree with us, which is okay, and that's the beauty of this country, right? We can all
yeah.
agree to disagree and um, keep living on, right?
Yep.
Um, so, but yeah, that's it, guys. Are we doing we're doing a show every other week, right?
Yeah, every other week. And I know we talked about this because, if, I know we spoke about if we start getting busier, we start getting more interest, we could look into doing this weekly.
Yep,
I enjoy doing this. And, when you guys are, leaving us comments and asking us questions as we're doing this, and, keeping us engaged, that makes it just a lot more exciting for us.
exactly. So we'll do another one again September 2nd. So if you're watching this and you love what you're hearing, please join us September 2nd. Like Omar said, the more followers we get, more comments we get, who knows, we might move this to weekly. So
Yeah.
it's a perfect time for me to do it on a Monday night. I know it's a perfect time for you to do it. So yeah, if you like what you're hearing, please share it, like, comment. If you don't agree with us, that's fine. Just comment, be respectful. We'd love to hear. We'd love to have proper discourse. Um, respectful discourse. So, everybody's entitled to their own opinions and things like that.
Yep. Said it. Can't disagree with that. But I
Yeah, yeah,
enjoyed this. So
yeah. Thank you for putting that together. By the way, that was pretty cool.
yeah, no, it wasn't actually that hard. I had to, other than just coming up with some of the icons and um, changing some of the icons around a little bit. It was fun, and I'm sure these icons will come in handy again when we do a tier list for something else, right? Like,
Right.
I don't know, I'm just throwing stuff out there. What if, what would be best in a 1v1 art, or 1v3 or something, and,
Right.
so
Right.
anyone else has ideas, feel free to let us know something you want us to talk about, and we'll definitely take that into consideration.
All right. Sounds good. And yeah, I think the next show we should talk about tournaments and competitions. Are they what are the
But
advantages
yeah,
advantages and disadvantages for self-defense? Because we have the tournament coming up at my school, soon. So it'd be a perfect time to talk about it. Um, and things like that. So we could talk about, MMA competitions as well, and Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu competitions. Um,
yeah,
you know,
I'd be looking forward to that. And there was recently a really big competition here called Capital Classics that happens annually. That happened a couple weeks ago.
nice.
And a couple of my students went there actually, so that'll be interesting. We can talk about that next time.
If you could get video clips from there, we can, present them to, um, you know, the audience.
Yeah, I will. I wasn't there. I will get permission from them to see. So they were my students, but they weren't there under my school. It
Okay,
was in some of the other arts. So I will see if they're willing to part with some of their videos and let us share them.
awesome. Sev says scenario-based scaling like multiple attackers would be awesome for a tier list. That's a good idea.
Yeah, that's a great idea. We'll write that down.
Yep.
Thank you.
All right, guys. Well, that's it. We will see you September 2nd, and sayonara.
Sayonara.